I was at the very beginning of a 1,000-mile solo off-road expedition. Not even 20 miles into this trail, I'd had the Cruiser on its side twice already today, and this would be the third time. I was now about to try probably the highest risk self-recovery I'd ever attempted, to try to free the vehicle from this.
I can't actually believe how mad this is. This is some of the most intense full drive I've ever done. I'm doing it alone. This trail is pushing me to my absolute limits here, I'm not gonna lie.
I'd gotten myself into this unenviable position while tackling an extremely washed out high moorland track alone, not 20 miles into an off-road expedition of 1,000. I'd come up to this huge washout on the track and pitched the vehicle down into it, immediately putting the Cruiser onto an insane angle that gravitated between 30 and 40 degrees. I'd tried for quite some time in vain to free the vehicle via conventional methods, giving it the full might of a 6-cylinder diesel, but I'd only succeeded in getting the vehicle more bogged, on its side in this 4-foot deep trench.
This is over 30 degrees right now.
It took me a long time to admit that I was beaten, but eventually I came to the conclusion that this was going to be a recovery job.
Holy I'm so stuck, I'm so stuck.
I jumped out of the Land Cruiser to figure out the best way forward. The vehicle was lying completely on its side, with the weight of the heavy camper cell acting as an anchor on the embankment to the vehicle's right. This was going to be such a high-risk recovery simply because of the angle. If I didn't plan my moves carefully, I knew there was a high chance of a full-on rollover here.
Yeah, I think maybe this thing here. Oh, this is so insane. Jesus. Look at this, man. This side of my Cruiser is going to be f***ed up. Easy access to the recovery boards at least.
First order of business here was going to be to get the recovery tracks off my roof. I could then plan out my next move from there.
So, I'm going to have to get my recovery boards off, and to do that, actually better get my tongue out. God, this car is on it's on a 30-degree angle right now, the car. This is insane.
I dragged my socket set out from its place inside the camper.
Tang out.
I also dug out my impact wrench to make this job quicker and easier.
Right, I think these are 17 nuts. So I think 17 an extension.
With the correct pieces selected and the tool set up, I could set to on this job.
It's also wet and lethal. Fucking hell.
I scaled the embankment and set about removing the recovery boards from the roof. The weather had now fully turned, and the rain was now starting to come down in sheets. I was anxious to get this job done as quick as possible, so I could get off this moor and out of the bad weather.
Oh, wank. Yeah, I have an anti-theft method here, which I forgot about.
The unfortunate reality with long-distance touring is you have to lock everything down.
One of many, many keys.
I'd forgotten that I'd secured these boards with a bike lock when I first put them up here. After a few attempts, I found the right key and released the recovery boards.
Okay.
I grabbed both tracks and climbed back down the bank.
Let's try to do something here.
I took a look around the vehicle and took a bit of time to think about where these tracks would be best placed for maximum impact during this recovery.
Yeah, see, it's gonna level out a bit more there.
There was an old railway sleeper in the deepest part of the washout, I guess left over from someone else's similar recovery attempt.
Yeah, just this needs filled in, so Actually, if we...
I wondered if I could perhaps use this thing alongside the recovery tracks in order to give myself a better chance of getting out of here in one go.
It's right there in the middle. Or on the rocky side, rather.
I kind of messed on with my setup for a while, trying to give myself the best chance of not turning this thing over on its side.
Throw them there to give me some traction. And then... I'm going to throw one at the back of the wheel because I couldn't get traction at the back either, so I'm going to throw that in there. Right underneath my car right now.
With everything set up, there was nothing else to do but attempt this recovery.
Okay.
I clambered back into my stricken car and steeled myself up for what was to come.
Make sure I'm belted in here because if it does all go south, I have to go that way. I don't want to be flying across the cabin out that window. Okay, wish me luck here.
I started the Cruiser up and gave it a bit of juice. On the first attempt, I missed the recovery boards entirely. I lined it up and gave it another try, but the wheels were still spinning in the mud. I think I must have missed the recovery tracks on that attempt too, so I backed up for another try.
Oh my god!
At the very end of that third attempt, I felt just the slightest bit of bite, and I kept my foot on the throttle to see if I could exploit it. The tyres were still spinning, but the traction boards were doing their job. The vehicle was finally on the move. I eased through on a 35-degree angle before it finally started to level out.
Yes, I'm through. I'm through. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I jumped out of the Cruiser, incredibly relieved not to be on my side.
See if there's any damage to the car. Remarkably not. It's nice and clean. All nice bare steel. Yeah, another scratch here, but that's it.
I turned to leave in triumph, but as I did so, I heard something.
How was that?
It was the unmistakable sound of air escaping from a tyre.
Ah. I punctured my tyre. Shit. I think I've rimmed it. Or maybe I've ripped a hole in the sidewall. Either which way, that's going down really quickly. Shit! Ah, that's a dick. This trail is pushing me to my absolute limits here, I'm not gonna lie. That's gonna be flat in a matter of minutes, I would think. I'm gonna go collect those boards and then get to a slightly patch of slightly flatter ground. Oh my god.
I was 20 miles into a journey of 1,000. I'd already turned the car on its side 3 times, and now I had an as yet unidentified but fast puncture in one of my tyres. Questions about the long-term tenability of this trip were firmly in front of mind.
Good old recovery boards. They're the only reason that I got out of there, 100%.
I set about collecting my recovery boards out of the ditch so I could put them back up on my roof. I was so exhausted from this insane down the road, I could do nothing but laugh.
I'm just gonna chuck these up on top. I don't think I'm gonna tighten them down because something tells me that I'm gonna be needing these again before long. I might have gone away with that tyre thing. I can't hear it anymore. Maybe you just popped it off the bead and it's gone back on with the weight of the car. only time will tell, I guess.
Despite everything, I was pleased with how that recovery had gone, and I slotted my recovery tracks back up on their holder on the roof, at least a little more confident in my ability to get myself out of the insane situations I was putting myself in.
Oh, I'm on the freaking roof. Yeah, I kind of forgot that these didn't go through very far, so I'm going to have to put the nuts on, even if they're just finger tight for now, because otherwise they're going to bounce off, and then I'll lose the freaking boards, and you obviously know how vital they are now, so can't be doing that. Yeah, finger tight these, and then we'll be on our way for now, I think. A bit of damage to the board there, but not so bad considering it's a 3-ton vehicle. One more nut somewhere, I think.
With my boards temporarily secured, I prepared to jump down off the roof and carry on with this expedition.
The funny one is, it's not even vaguely over. Kind of went and scattered down there. It's still mental down there as well. So, oh, we're in it for today. Okay. I think I'm ready to hit the road again. I've just basically sat for the last kind of 10 minutes, just like staring into space. Okay.
I turned the cruiser over and prepared to continue into the unknown. The trail was taking me into the depths of a thick patch of fog, ever deeper into this high moorland terrain on an extremely rarely used track. Visibility was reduced to no more than 5 meters as I forged deeper into this muddy and waterlogged moor. Sometimes the tyre tracks would almost disappear entirely in the mist, leaving me with a strange sense of disorientation, as if I might take a wrong turn at some point and find myself marooned forever on this wild and misty moorland. I continued pushing the cruiser through the mist as the land became more and more waterlogged, with thick wet mud grabbing at the tyres, trying to bring the cruiser to a halt. I came to a wet, marshy section of the moor and completely lost traction.
Christ, I'm getting stuck.
I slammed the cruiser into reverse and backed up quickly, reticent to remain static for even a moment in case the vehicle settled into the mire. I quickly changed up into second gear in low 4 and gunned it, trying to hit the marsh with enough momentum to pull the cruiser through. The gambit had paid off, and the almost 3-ton cruiser reached the other side, sailing through the thick gloopy mud to the relatively dry ground on the other side. As I pushed deeper into the fog and further into this lonely high moorland, I couldn't help but let the somber atmosphere of this place wash over me. The whole place had an almost zombie apocalypse kind of vibe, and as the fog got thicker, I imagined the Land Cruiser as a lone beacon of bright LED lights, diesel fumes and life, picking its way through an otherwise subdued and silent world, almost like a spacecraft exploring the surface of some far-flung and unknown world. I lost track of time as I continued crossing this high moor, pushing through the reed beds and moor grasses, following a vague line on a digital map that I'd plotted out weeks prior from the safety and comfort of a warm house, a far cry from the strange and brooding place that I now found myself pushing through. After an indeterminate amount of time, I saw the vague outline of some huge hulking mass loom up out of the fog ahead. As I drew closer, the shape took on the form of trees with limbs and branches, and I realised I was looking at the beginnings of a forest, an island oasis in this world of fog. As I drew up to the woodland, the marshland and moor gave way immediately to a hard-packed, hardcore track, and I felt the Cruiser's tyres bite gratefully onto stone and gravel after being on mud and marshland for so long. I took my foot off the accelerator and let the Land Cruiser roll to a halt. I turned off the ignition and jumped out of the car into the woodland. This is insane, true wilderness. Just coming into the forest here, it's like so quiet. I've got now to check the front tyre. Hopefully it's just rebeaded itself. I knelt down, listening for my leak. I was disappointed to find that I could indeed still hear that faint hiss of air escaping from somewhere. It's definitely not rebeaded itself. The problem was, I just couldn't work out from where. I can hear it, but I can't see it. I don't think it's the rim. I think it's a puncture somewhere. I couldn't find it, and so I assumed it must be a minor puncture after all. I decided that it'd be best to just carry on along the trail and proceed with caution. Frickin' plague of flies around here. This was a cool area, and I might have stayed a bit longer to catch my breath if it hadn't have been for the thousands of flies that were inhabiting this spot. As it was, I took refuge back in the vehicle cab. It's a really cool area, but I need to get the hell out of here because the plague of flies in here. I mean, there are literally millions of them swarming around the car right now. Horrible. I nosed the Cruiser forward onto the rocky woodland path. This track looked like it was going to be a pretty high quality unpaved road. And I'm not going to lie, despite my mission to do 1,000 miles of off-road driving, after the day that I'd had so far, I was really happy to see a track like this. Hemmed in on both sides by tall Scotch pine trees and covered in pine needles, the track curved its way through the forest. After the four-wheel driving I've been up against this morning, this track felt like a breeze, and I was really enjoying the feeling of making some progress on this trail at last. After a few miles through the forest, the trail opened out into what appeared to be an area of high forestry land. The weather up here was bleak, with the low cloud and heavy rain seemingly set in for a long haul today. Nevertheless, I was having a great time throwing the Cruiser around on these easy trails. In high 4/3 gear, I finally started to feel like I was making some progress on this network of high forestry routes. But it wouldn't be long before I was quickly brought back down to earth. I stopped the Cruiser on the trail to have a quick check over of the vehicle and to see if I could find any signs of my tyre leak. What I found quickly spelled out another disaster. I've ripped another hole in my sidewall. Oh my god, that is just so annoying. That's another 200 quid right there. Yep, look at that. Ripped right there. Massive hole in the sidewall. Shit. And that's this one leaking as well. That's not good. Because I haven't got two spares, I've only got one spare. Yeah, that's really not a good one because I mean, I'm 35 kilometers into this trail and I've ripped a hole in my sidewall on the rear tyre, and this one has a leak somewhere, and I can only hope it's not sidewall. Oh my god, this is turning into a very expensive trip already. So that's now deflated so quickly and so fast that I can't get my jack under there, so I'm going to try and blow the tyre up and then hopefully be able to do it without having to get the high lift jack off. Time was now of the essence if I wanted to avoid making this a bigger recovery than it had to be. For the time being, I had to put aside my thoughts of the ramifications of what it meant to lose a tyre this early in the expedition and focus on the task at hand. Oh my god. I needed to get some air into that stricken tyre and fast. It was deflated at such a rate that I couldn't get my bottle jack under the rear spring hanger, and if I didn't act quickly, my rear axle would be resting on the ground. It's almost flat right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to
inflate this enough. Let's see if we can inflate this enough to, this is a 20 right now. I think I might be able to get the jack underneath the back.
With my onboard air system connected up, I discharge all the air out of my 1 gallon tank into the tyre and let the compressor kick in to do the rest of the work.
Yeah, quite honestly, I'm a bit worried right now. I mean, that's just been such an insane morning of 4-wheel drive. I'm 34 kilometers into it. I have 1,200 left to go. I've already ripped out one tyre sidewall and got a puncture in the other one. So that's, well, one spare definitely that I've got to put on the back here, obviously. This is not working.
A sidewall rip out spells doom for any tyre, and I knew I wasn't going to get one of this size here inside of a week.
Yeah, this is just way crazier than I ever thought that it would be, so immediately questions come into my mind about the tenability of this as to whether I'm actually going to be able to complete this. I wish I brought another tyre. I had 2 as well. I managed to smoosh that under into the mud. Shit, so I can take that off now at least.
With the bottle jack under the axle, at least that pressure was off.
Yeah, back in there. Friggin' hell.
I picked up my jack handle and went round the back of the vehicle in order to jack it up. Kneeling down in the mud and filth with the rain coming down around me in sheets kinda had me wondering where the hell I'd gone wrong.
The other thing about this, obviously, is that now that I've lost this tyre totally, it means that I'm doing the rest of the trip without a spare at all. So this has happened with the first 34 kilometres of the trail. This trail is 1,200. So even if I get puncture, like a pretty bad puncture, like I'm going to be struggling. If one more thing happens like this is over.
With the whole trip in existential crisis, not 30 miles in, all I could do was focus on what was in front of me, and that was changing this tyre.
Fuck me.
My enthusiasm for both this job and the trip in general was at an all-time low right now.
Oh.
Already absolutely worn out from a day on the road, I set about cracking the nuts on the wheel. With the wheel nuts loosened with the tyre iron, I used the impact gun to whip them off the rest of the way. With that done, I dug out my socket set so that I could pull my spare wheel off the back of the car. Before I did that, I came to pull the wheel with the stricken tyre off, but it wouldn't budge. I realised that having re-inflated the tyre, it was now making contact with the ground. So I was going to have to jack up the car even more, unless I wanted to wait for the air to escape out the sidewall rip out again. Changing a wheel on a heavy vehicle like this is pretty physical work, not least after the day I'd had and in the pouring rain. By this point I was absolutely knackered, and I knew I still had a way to go before this vehicle was in a good enough condition to drive down off this moor. I started loosening the bolts on my spare wheel carrier at the back. With that done, I then switched up to a larger socket size so that I could drop down the spare wheel itself.
Exhausted.
With air still loudly spewing out of the sidewall of the tyre that I'd just taken off, I set up my tools so that I could change out the spare and get it fitted up onto the vehicle. I lifted the wheel into place and levered it up and over the hub. Lastly, I rotated the wheel on the hub until it located onto the wheel studs.
God damn.
For the next part, I grabbed my impact gun. With the nuts all roughly tightened with the gun, I went back to the Cruiser to grab my tyre iron. Using the leverage of the iron, I tightened up the wheel nuts in a star pattern, making sure they were all nice and tight for the trail ahead.
And I'm absolutely wiped. That has been so intense so far. Oh my god.
Last task before I could get off this moor was to clean up this mess and attach the wheel that had come off the Cruiser to the back. I wrestled the heavy wheel and tyre up into my drop-down cage system. I lifted the cage and the wheel into place and tightened the nut that holds the wheel onto the back of the vehicle. Only after doing so did I realise that I put the tyre on the wrong way and I couldn't get the bolts tightened that hold the cage into place. I was going to have to drop it out and rotate the tyre in the cage.
Oh, there's no fight left in me.
I was absolutely soaked to the skin by this point and beat. I knew I just had to get this cage tightened up and I was going to be home free. But this task was going to have one last surprise left in it for me.
Shit! Holy f***. I forgot that it was on a jack. That saved me a job, isn't it? Oh my god.
Since I'd been pushing hard on the back of the vehicle, the Cruiser had jumped right off the bottle jack. In the moment, I was absolutely sure the Cruiser was on its way down that hill. After that fright, I carried on fighting with it for a solid 10 minutes, trying to get the damn thing to sit right in the pouring rain.
Well, I've probably lost my 13, so I'll have to use one of these, a small one, and adapt it with this. Not ideal to be using that with the gun, but kind of got no choice at this point.
With my dodgy bastardized socket piece, I would finally be able to rattle these bolts up. With the wheel secured on the back, I could at last start putting my tools away, clearing up, and continue along this trail.
Okay. I tell you what, man, I've never really seen the logic of carrying two spares. Well, I guess I kind of did, but you know, I always thought, oh, it's overkill. After this today, seeing how quickly it can all go south, there's not a chance. I don't think I would do something like this without two spares again. The argument against carrying two spares, I guess, is that if that had been a normal puncture, I could just go down into the town, get it repaired, whatever, you know. But with that being a sidewall rip out, and this tyre size being not unusual, but not stock by any means at I think any tyre shops in the UK, it means that actually if you get a catastrophic issue with one of your tyres like I've just had, that's you stuck for realistically days while they order it in. So say you're on a tight timeline, or if you just don't want to get stuck, which I really never do, then two spares is actually gone from, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have, to kind of like a must, really. I guess you live and learn with these things. It's kind of a hard lesson to learn. I'm gonna just try and wash my hands a bit because I'm soaked and covered head to toe in fucking mud and sheep turd, so I'll wash my hands at least. I don't want to get giardia as well to compound matters. Oh my god. Oh, I'm trying to dry myself a bit. Look, so wet. Oh. What is that saying that they say? It's not an adventure until something goes wrong. And that is case in point what this is. Well, to be honest, this kind of was an adventure before that part went wrong. I could have lived without it, but you take the rough with the smooth in this game. Yeah, I'm genuinely soaked to the freaking skin. My boots, supposedly waterproof, but they can't handle this level of water. Holy fuck. Okay, on with the trail, I guess. I kind of really need to spend a little bit of time thinking about what is the best course of action now, because I'm now travelling without a spare, and you know that's ill-advised even on the tamest of four-wheel drive tracks. Never mind this. Just where the hell am I going to get a spare? I mean, I'm not going to get a spare, am I? That's the top and bottom of it. I'm literally 33 kilometers into this trail. Okay, it's time to get down off this particular trail. I'm just really stumped now as to what to do next, because That's taking the wind right out of my sails, I'm not gonna lie. Like 33 kilometers in and I haven't got a spare now. Like, that's massive. If that happens again and I'm up on a crazy trail like this, I'm actually stuck. Like, that's me done. So yeah, I don't really know what to do here.
After that long, unplanned diversion, I at last put rubber back to trail and continued westward across the moor in the torrential rain. But classically by this point, it wouldn't be long before the next thing stopped me in my tracks. I felt an unexpected torrent of water hit me whilst in the cab, spattering across the wheel and my instrument cluster.
What the f***?
I rolled the car to a halt.
That's never happened before. I've got freaking tons of water coming in here. I don't know whether that's through the seal, the windscreen seal, or whether it's through the FRP top, but that's a freaking nightmare. Oh my god, everything's going wrong. Oh god, those words are ringing in my ears. It's not an adventure until something goes wrong. Go off.